All right, let's go ahead and get started. I appreciate everyone being here. I'm sure we'll get a lot more people in here as the hour goes on. Like I said, we will stay around for an hour. If we need to go over, we can. I got plenty of time afterwards. If it's shorter, that's fine too. So thank you for the questions that were posted in there. Welcome to all the people that are new on the program. I know it's a little daunting, but make sure you're reaching out to our support team for help. In the bottom right-hand corner, you should have a purple widget. And you can always email help@open2close for any questions that you might have. So anything I don't answer today or we don't get to, or I may reference that as, hey, we're going to have to look into that. That's all going to be at help@open2close or the chat widget down at the bottom right-hand side of your screen that's purple. It would appear right down here. I don't have it on mine because I'm in a different part of the program. All right, so setup. What is the best way to restrict contacts visible by brokerages? Sure, that's a great question. So, and I apologize, I'm on a new computer, so if I don't know how to do shortcuts and stuff, bear with me. I have switched to the dark side and got a Mac, so I am not totally familiar yet. All right, so let's go down here to organization and users, and we're going to come over to the agents, and then inside the agents, now you have permissions. So this has switched a little bit. You used to be able to go into an agent and you had another tab here for contacts and how you would handle contacts. Now we've went ahead and put that on the outside. So when you go under the agents, you're going to see permissions here, and you're going to be able to check if you want them to see all of the contacts in your database. If you uncheck this, they're only going to see the contacts that they input into their agent portal. So that's how you're going to do the difference there. Now on your team, let's say you want your team members to see the contacts that the agent is putting in through the intake form. Those are going to be under your contacts here. You're going to go to permissions. You're going to come down to, let me see, where is it here? Contacts, access all contacts. So this is going to give your team members. So anyone in your team members, you can give them access to all the contacts as well. If you have like a lower level employee that just started and you don't want them to have access to all the contacts, you can uncheck this and they're only going to see the contacts that they've put into the system. So you can choose how you want to handle that. All right. Matthew, anything you want to add to that as far as contact permissions? Let me go into the global settings real quick, and we'll go into defaults, and I'll also show you over here, there used to be some things about contacts as well. So you'll see that they're missing now. So if you were used to seeing them here, they're no longer here. They're over in the permissions like I showed you a minute ago. Okay. Now these ones are kind of interesting. In the agent portal, if you want the agents to be able to see more filtering options, not necessarily, it kind of has something to do with contacts. So I wanted to point this out while I was over here as well. Okay. Matthew, anything else you want to add to the contact visibility if you're on here?
Oh, you actually read my mind. It was going to be talking about the old spot it used to be. So if you are familiar with where it used to be, don't get turned around. It is, we just moved it into a place that made more sense under permissions, just so we could have control of it. A lot of people are getting confused because the agent created this contact versus the team created this contact. There's a lot of weird just scenarios that would pop up.
Right. And if you're a TC agency, obviously you probably wouldn't want them to have access to your whole database. But if you're working with a team and you guys are all working together, then that's something you may want them to see. So this is one thing Matthew always likes me to point out while I'm here is, what was I going to hit on here? I was going to hit on all the things that are in this little profile menu. So you have your profile, you have your organization, which would take you back to where we were just a second ago. You got your plan and billing. You have the support center, so you can search for articles and videos. And then you have the idea lab. If you guys have any, ideas on things that could be improved in the program, this is a great place to put them. We look at these every quarter, and then we analyze what's going to get the best bang for the buck and hit the most clients. And so that's how we make our product roadmap. And then we have keyboard shortcuts, which are just like, Control O to get the organization screen, things like that. We have the affiliate program, and we have the change log. So in this change log, it's no means perfect yet, but we are working on a better system for this change log. And a lot of the changes that are happening in the system, you're going to be able to see here. So you can scroll down and see the dates that these were released, what happened. And if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to support. So But I did want to point out that we do have this change log and we have been updating it, and we are going to continue to make this a little bit better. Okay. What's the best way to filter tasks, et cetera, by role? If I have my team set up for future use with roles, but it's just me now. Yeah, so let's go into let me pick a transaction that I know we have some stuff in. And we're going to go into the task menu. And so there's some filters here. You can filter by person on your team. So you can just say, I just want to see Peter's task or Lois's task or Adam's task. You can do it by tag. So if you wanted to put your roles in here, you could do it that way. You would have to assign those tags to each of the tasks as you're setting them up. You can sort by color. You can sort by which ones have triggers. You can sort by which ones you've marked critical right here. Let me think what else you can do in here. You can sort by the template that they came in from. So if I click on all tasks and I just want to see the tasks associated with this template that came in, I can click on that and, see if I've completed all those tasks, which I have. And then you can go right back to all tasks if you want. So there's quite a few filtering options there. Now, as you add team members, you're going to be able to say, I only want them to see the tasks that they're assigned to. And once you create your team and have those people under there, you can, here, let me go over here real quick and I'll show you just so it makes sense what I'm saying. If you come over here and you go in and impersonate their account, you will actually see exactly what they see. So sometimes it's deceiving when you're in your account if you're the admin because you're seeing everything. But if you actually come over here and impersonate their account, you'll see exactly what Lois is seeing. Or if you come down here, you'll see exactly what Maria's seeing. So, all right. Yeah, Nicole, welcome to the program. Thanks for posting that up. So we could definitely have some new people in here as well. So we will try to cover topics as thoroughly as possible while we're in here. Okay, any best practices to integrate using CTM for document signing within open to close? No, unfortunately, CTM doesn't have an exposed API for at least the last time I checked. We do have a lot of people from Colorado in the group, so I would definitely post that in the Facebook group and see if anyone's found any workarounds. It's a little bit of a dated program. It doesn't have an API exposed. We have contacted them once. There was no response, so we haven't contacted them again, but our API is open. So any program that you guys want to connect to, you have that ability as long as the other program has that open API as well. We also have webhooks to be able to say, anytime I change this field, send that over to this other program. So I'm sorry, about CTM, but there's just nothing we can do at this point. If you have a contact over there, and if you have a way to hook that up, I'm sure all our Colorado users would be stoked if we could get some type of integration in there. So by all means, if you can make a connection or if you have a high-level contact over there, that would be great to have a conversation with them. Okay, I've been using the product for about 8 months, have some great task templates in place, utilizing email and text templates and intake forms. Can't think of any questions. Okay, perfect. So great to hear. Glad you've been around. If you have any questions, obviously, hopefully you've been reaching out to support. Hopefully you've been utilizing that knowledge base up here under the support center. We do have a lot, and we're redefining this quite a bit. We're condensing down a lot of the old videos and procedures so that you guys aren't looking through stuff that's outdated. And we're trying, it's a big process, right? Because we started with over 500 videos. Now we're up probably higher than that. So our content team is going back through and looking at everything and parsing those down so that there's more useful and more relevant information in there for you guys. And hopefully we'll have a better organization of those as well. We're switching systems. And so hopefully it's going to be a really powerful thing for you guys to access and get better suggestions as you putting your questions to support. One thing that people don't really do that I've seen is when you put in a question, it is going to suggest 3 articles for you. Take a look at them, because honestly, a lot of the times the questions that we're answering in support, you won't have to wait. All you have to do is look at that procedure and the answer is right in front of you. So a lot of people miss that. It comes up on the screen automatically and it's easy to overlook. So take a look at that as you're submitting tickets. Okay. Can I have a doc or task template loaded based on a field? Yes, you can. So are you using, I'm assuming you're talking about through an intake form. If you're not, then I'll go over both scenarios. So if you're using an intake form in your templates, go to intake forms. I'm not sure what's in these, so we're just going to wing it here. But you would come down to triggers, and then you would say, add a trigger. I want to do this when the agent submits, or the TC, depending on who you're having fill out the original intake form. What do I want to do? I want to add a template. You can remove a template as well, but we're just going to grab that one. We're going to say add, that's correct. And now we come in here and we're going to, you don't have to turn it on yet, but I'm going to, just so you can see it a little bit easier. And then you're going to come down here and do a condition. So if the property field, let me try to find one that makes sense. Contact client type is equal to, so you have a lot of different options here, but if it's equal to buyer, okay. So if the field contract client type is equal to buyer, now this is going to trigger this template to come into your transaction. That's how you would do it on initial setup. Now, if you're talking about after the fact, well, it's, and that's included on every single plan, the thing that I just showed you. Now, our advanced plan has some more advanced features where you could say, let me go to the history and go back into that transaction that we were just in. So what you can do here is you can come to triggers if you're on our scale plan, and you can go to our pricing, open to close.com/pricing/V2/ Matthew, tell me what it is. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's open to close.com/V2/pricing. And that gets you, or you can just go to our homepage, which is a lot easier, and click on the pricing tab, and it'll take you right there. And you can see what the difference is between our three plans. But if you have our scale plan, go to the trigger menu, okay? And this is going to give you the ability to do exactly what you did in the intake forms, but it's going to happen throughout the transaction. So the transaction is constantly listening to what you're doing. So if I update a field here, we have all these processes that are happening in the background that's basically going to check every smart block, every email trigger, every task trigger, everything in the whole system. It goes through your whole system and checks and says, hey, if they change this from active to pending, what do I need to remind this person of? And basically, if you had any conditions that said, if this is pending, send this email, then as soon as you change it to pending, it's going to scan. It takes, milliseconds to scan this stuff. It scans it, and then it pops it up here and says, hey, this email is ready to go. Because you've changed this to pending, maybe 5 emails need to go out. Maybe a document template needs to come in. Maybe a field section needs to come in. Like I said, yes, there's septic on this property. Now a whole field section of septic fields come in that I need to accomplish. A document template for septic documents that I need for compliance. Task templates for septic that I need. So all this can happen just by changing a field. Now that is on our upgraded plan. The reason is because of all the processes in the background do take quite a bit more time and money and maintenance from us. And so they have to be on a higher plan. It's just not something we could offer on a low plan and still, frankly, make money. So hopefully that answers your question. And I see Matthew's talking to you right now. So if you have any follow-ups, you can definitely post those as well. Okay, I'm building a new process for our office using the reporting function, and I've run into an issue with assigning multiple agent users to transactions. If I have a primary and co-agent per transaction, or we represent both sides, is there a workaround to have multiple agents show up in reporting? Only the first agent portal user per transaction seems to be pulled into reports. That is a large question, and I'm going to have to do a little research on that, Megan. Let me go over there real quick. So I am assuming you are saying that if I go and say Brian Griffin and I want to report it, well, this is a bad one because this is commission, but let me go to something else. Actually, that's commission too. Hold on a second. We're on Zoom, so it's going to take a little while to load these. It takes a couple seconds in real time. On Zoom, unfortunately, it multiplies that time by like 100 if you have a bunch of widgets in here, which I probably do. Okay, so let me go back to contract status and we'll look at this one. So this isn't a commission-based one. This is a, let's see here, type. Okay, let me add a new one here. Okay, so let's go to pending files and we'll go ahead and close this, and then we'll build a new report. And then here's pending. So this is a field. Now, if I'm reporting on Brian Griffin, I'm assuming what you're saying is if Brian and Andrew is the co-lister, and I add him here, then he's not showing up as part of that transaction. If that's what you're saying, then we'll need to look into it and send this to the dev team. Definitely submit a ticket to help@openToClose.com or the widget down the bottom right. Submit a video, actually show what's happening there, and we can send it to the dev team. And if there's something, it's probably just it's probably a really easy fix, honestly. We just need to take a look at it in your process and see what's happening. So now, one thing I will point out while I'm here, we did change this a bit to have a commission type as well. So if you are using our commissions, and that's down here. Okay, now we have the ability in these commissions when you're in here to, oh, I don't have it on mine yet. I don't think. Here, hold on a second. Let me check one more place to see if I have it over here in the properties yet. Commissions. Yeah, okay, I don't have, oh yeah, I do, here you go. So now we have the ability to assign a user to a line item. Over in the reporting tab, if you were using our fields, it had no way, basically what Megan was saying, it had no way to split that between 4 different people. So if I wanted 4 agents on that file, maybe one was a showing agent, one was a co-listing agent, one was the main agent, and one's the team leader. All 4 of them want credit for part of that commission. Well, now you can come in here and every line item is associated with a user. So now I can come in and choose which user I want to associate with that line of commission. So this person would be associated with this 2,325. This person would be associated with the 20,931. Now, when you go back over to your reporting, now you have a lot more customization available where you can say, I want to pull from the commission lines, not the fields. So you can report on fields and see how many pendings you've had during a certain time period. Or you can report on the commission lines, and then it will go back through all your transactions and add up all of the commissions for, let's say, Brian Griffin, and it will add those all together and get whatever that total is right there. So hopefully that'll be helpful for people. It's pretty high level. So as you get in there, you're probably going to stumble a little bit getting used to it. We are producing some videos on that. You can definitely reach out to support, and they can get in contact with me or Jana, and we can probably walk you through that a little bit easier. So, okay, I love the ability to assign a user to each part of the commission. Is it possible to save those agent users in a template? Yes. Wait a second, let me think about this. Sorry, it's a brand new feature, so we're still kind of working through some of the kinks. I think what we're going to do in the future, Megan, is I think we're going to put a contact role in there. No, the contact role wouldn't work because there could be multiple people. I'm going to have to get back to you on that. If you want to submit that in your ticket and ask that again, I'll get with the dev team and see where we're at and what final decision made, because I know there were some issues with one of the things we do want to do in the future is like in the widgets, if you're familiar with the commission widgets. Here, let me come over here so everyone understands what I'm saying, because I know this is a very new feature for everyone. So if I go in here, in these commission templates, you should be able to add a user. The problem is you're going to have to add a ton of templates if you want to add, because then you're going to have the Zillow Andrew split, the Zillow Brian split, the Zillow whatever. It might be easier just to assign those people after the fact. Now up here in the widgets, now you could, though, if you have the scale plan, you could just clone those and make like one for each agent, and that may make it easier on you. I don't know. Up here in the widgets, one thing we want to do is like you can add the buyer and then the buyer name. What we would like to do is put a contact role in here so that you could say, hey, anyone in the buyers, go ahead and list them in these widgets, or anyone that's a lender, list them, or anyone that's an escrow person, list them. And so hopefully that will, we're constantly going to be improving reporting and commission. It's brand new. So all these are great. These are great suggestions that you guys have. Definitely put them in the idea lab so that we can take a look at those and improve upon this in real time. Yeah, shout out to the call team too, because they were the ones that told us that was desperately needed, the user information. So shout out to them for bringing that up. I really appreciate that from Ken. Also in reporting, we do have the ability on the scale plan to go ahead and pull this out as a JSON file, this data, or a list view, or a graph JSON, a list JSON, or a list. And so if you want to take this information and pull it over to another program, you have that ability as well. Okay, so there's no way to restrict contact visibility based on your groups. Would that be something y'all are working towards? What groups are you talking about? Can you be a little bit more specific, Sarah? Are you talking about the teams in the organization screen here? Because if you are talking about teams, they can only see what they can see. So if they're a person in this group, they're only going to be able to see these transactions by this one person team. They're not going to be able to see the transactions from 3-person team or Acme Realty Boise. So this, in essence, you could have a bunch of expansion teams here. You could have like the Phoenix listing team, the Phoenix contract to close, the Boise listing team, the Boise contract. They're not going to be able to see each other's transactions unless that person is on multiple teams. So if you want to clarify that and make sure I'm talking about the same thing that you are, let me know. Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. You're talking about contacts and saying like these 3 people can see just this group of people in my database. And we're not going to break it down that far yet. We probably will do a rebuild on contacts eventually. Contacts is kind of on the list for the future. Let's see, agent portal users. I don't want the agents to be able to see our whole database. Yeah, you can just turn it off. So just go to permissions here. And you can just turn off the agents so that they can only see the people that they input into the system. They can't see everybody. Okay, so only their contacts that they input into the system they'll be able to see. Just turn this off and they won't see your database. Yeah, and in the future, like I was saying, we are going to work on contacts a little bit and make it a little bit more robust, give you some more options as well. All right, let me clear out some of these questions that we've answered. Use cases for priority buttons. If we mark the field as high priority, EMD due date, closing date, will that affect the health bar and no read before bed? Yes, it will. So the only time you want to do high priority, so let's go back over to history and go to our transaction here. And let's just go into, let's just talk about fields since we're right here. So the use case for this would be like, let me see here, additional earnest deposit, right? That needs to be done today. Like it's due today and you don't want to forget before the end of the day. It's not, you want to give them a little time. Maybe you want to give them until noon to get it there. But if you don't hear anything, you want to make sure that you are following up on this. Now, this might happen through a trigger. You may have an email triggered at noon the day before. This is the way I do it. I have an email. I think mine's like 2 p.m. 2 p.m. the day it's due. And I'll have that go out to the buyer, a text go out to the buyer agent, remind your buyer, an email going out to the buyer agent saying, hey, we need this money by 5 o'clock today, delivered to the escrow company or whatever. You can set all that up through the triggers if you're on the scale plan to have that automated. But if you're just doing it through the priority button, if you do high, it's going to turn this red. Okay. So high is like, hey, I do not want to forget this before the end of the day. So if I mark this high, then I come to my health bar, and let's just say everything's cleared off except for some of my fields. And then I can come in here and say additional earnest deposit is red. They promised to get it there tomorrow morning. It's going to be late, but they promised to get it there tomorrow morning. I could either leave this high and just know that red's okay before I leave the program, or I could bump that down to medium, and then it's going to turn it more of this gold, and it'll get rid of this red. If I don't have any red here, turn these off. And here. Well, there's just a lot of red on this property, unfortunately, so it's not going to affect the size of that. But typically what would happen is this red starts getting smaller and smaller until all the red's gone, and then it will disappear and it will just be orange and blue. Okay. Same thing can happen with documents and contacts. So if I have a document and I'm like, hey, I need to follow up on this before the end of the day, you could either mark it a color, but I like to make it a priority. So here's the priority button right here. You can make it high. And that way it turns this red. And I remember, like you said, no red before bed. So I'm checking all that red before I log out for the day to make sure I get all this red done, if it's applicable. And then contact, same thing. You have a priority button right here. So if I need to call this guy before the end of the day, or I need to follow up with him or something, or I'm just whatever kind of reminder, you can do that through here as well. Okay. How do I always get a contract date on my calendar? I'm finding that the purple check mark that says it's on my calendar shows up differently on each transaction. Before I approve the intake form, I want to make sure my API calendar is synced. So yeah, these purple buttons are the ones that are going to be synced over. And then you can also check this button here. I'm glad I was on the screen. You can check this and say, I want to include on all calendar date invites. And now all these will be synced over to the calendar. So that's the only steps you should have to take. If I come into this field, you can also sync them to a certain calendar here. You also have calendar settings in your global settings that you can look at. And then you also have the ability to do this manually. So let's say one of these wasn't checked purple because you don't want it to happen every time, but you do want it to go to Morty and Charles. You can do those individually as well. Matthew, anything you want to add to that? I know you are the calendar guru. Unfortunately, you get all the calendar questions.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So one thing, just sometimes for whatever reason, there could be a disruption in the connection with the API. A password change could do it. So disconnecting and reconnecting that usually will help out. So you just go to your apps and API section, disconnect your Google, reconnect it. It usually will clear anything up.
Apps and API, just so you guys know, is under this gear icon, and then hit apps and API. Oh, there we go. Apps and API. And then in the app section, all you're going to do is disconnect your Google and then reconnect your Google by putting in your password again, and that will do the reconnect. You've already set up everything in the background, so you won't have to do anything else besides that.
Yeah. Important to mention too, because I know people get a little stumbled on this one, is that there is a step for like the whitelisting. If you've already done whitelisting, right at the bottom, there's a checkbox saying skip this, I've already done it. Just in case, because you're like, why can't I go to the next step? That might be why.
Yeah, good point.
One last thing too is, if you are in a transaction, I don't think people use this too often. If you go into the global settings, default settings, you can push all of the calendar dates you have set up to push through to the calendar. You do the all in one go. So there's that option as well inside of the actual transaction. Look at the default settings over there.
Oh, in the actual transaction part.
Yeah, it'll be like an option right at the bottom. You just go ahead and click on that, say which calendar you want to push it to. It'll try and push through all of those dates. Now, just be careful because that is going to push through all of the dates that it can try and push through that you have set up with that purple icon. So if it's not purple yet, it's going to try and push it through.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so I'll leave that up there, Matthew. You can clear that one out after you're done. Speaking of integrations, how can you recommend people to assist us to integrate with Slack, Airtable, Jotform, Zapier? Yeah, good question. I would talk to, there's a couple different people that are really good at this. Justin Benson over at the Bara Agency, BARA-agency.com, I believe it is. Yeah, Justin's great. He does a lot of stuff like that. Jeff Moore with Osiris. If you're working with Follow Up Boss and Open to Close, Jeff does a ton of stuff with Zapier and integrating those two programs. Let's see here. Daniel Poston, he does a lot of stuff with Follow Up Boss as well. Who am I missing? I think there's one more that I'm missing here, but yeah, give those guys a call, hook up with them. You can always email into support and get that list, and they can get more information for you on phone numbers and things like that as well, if you can't find them online. All right. Okay, so this one says you can create a contact in CTME for your property and Open to Close, and then add the Open to Close property email address to connect in CTME so you can easily send your executed documents to your property. Thank you. That is a great suggestion. And actually, I wanted to bring that up because you can do the same thing. So in Skyslope, one of the limitations in Skyslope is you can't send documents to a listing for some reason. Like they just don't give us that ability in the API. And you can do it in the contract to close portion. It goes into the documents tab, but on the listing, it doesn't. So a lot of these programs that do use the email address, one of the things you can do, like in Skyslope, is come over to contacts and create a contact called Skyslope 1234 Beverly. And then you put the unique email in there to send documents to. And then you can just email those documents over to that email address. Now, if you have the scale plan, you have the ability to do this automatically. So you can come over to triggers and say, anytime this document exists in the property. So what happens is over in the documents, as soon as you set this file role on it with this flame, it's going to say this document exists in here. over in your triggers, you're going to say when buyer broker exists in property, then go ahead and send this email. So this is going to happen automatically. You're going to have an email set up. The condition is going to be if buyer broker exists in property, it's going to trigger this. You'd have this set to immediate instead of a certain day of the week at a certain time. And then it's immediately going to come over here to ready to go. You don't have to review it. You can just hit send. But all you have to do is hit send, and then all those documents can go over to Skyslope. So yeah, just a little workaround if you're working on listings in Skyslope. My Skyslope does not receive emails from open to close with attachments that are more than 2 megabytes. Has anyone else experienced this? I haven't heard of that. Let me we were just actually talking to the bar agency yesterday about some workarounds in Skyslope because their API just doesn't do exactly what we need it to do. So I can mention that to them and ask them if they've seen that as well, and if there's a workaround for that. So. All right. Yeah, so to reiterate, Jana posted, you can create a contact in CTME for your property and open to close. So create a contact in CTME for your property and open to close, add the OTC property email address. So that's over here in the documents. Where am I looking here? Up here. If you click on it, it copies it. So all you gotta do is click on this link. It's gonna copy it to your clipboard. And then you can easily send your executed documents to your property. So,
and just to expand on that a little bit, just kind of the functionality with the property email address, the way that works, you could plug that into another system, obviously, to have email sent to it, or your agents can send documents to that property email address. And what happens is it comes into the system's going to scan the email for those attachments, bring it into this transaction, and then it's going to make it an unimproved document. So it gives you a chance to review it. Is this what I need? Put it in the right spot, the right folder, the right placeholder, whatever you got to do. So
it's also going to alert you on this dashboard. It's going to come in here as unapproved document, and it'll be right at the top. And it used to have the time of when it came in, but anyway, right here, it'll have that document, and then you can either click on it here, or you can actually go into the property. So you can do all your unapproved documents at one time without having to go into the property if you don't want to. So anyway, that's there. The other thing I was going to say was, you said about unapproved documents. Shoot, I just lost my train of thought. About the, let's go back in there for a second. I think this will jog my memory if I'm in here. If you're in like Gmail or Outlook or something and you can't remember what this is, like if you have an email that came into Gmail and you're working out of Gmail and you want to send it over to the property, instead of looking in your email in open to close and just sticking it in the property, like if you're working in Gmail, what you can do is send an email to this right off the bat so that it's stored in your memory in Gmail. The way to find these, because you're not going to remember this email address, just type in TX plus. As soon as you type in TX plus into your search bar in Gmail or Outlook, it's going to pop up every single one of these emails that you've ever typed in. So now if you know the numbers to the address, or at least the first number, you could type in 123, and now all of a sudden it's going to parse that down to just the 3 addresses, and then you can pick it real quick and send that email off. So it's just a little kind of like a little best practice hack that you could remember. All right. File submitted. Is there a way to have this field automatically fill in as the day of the transaction is created? I wish. We've been going round and round about this for 2 years and trying to figure out a way. There is no way currently, unfortunately, but in the future, it's definitely something that we would love to do, and have this field, have certain fields filled in with like default numbers and things like that. Something we're working on. It does have down here when it was created, and so you can look here if you can't remember, but unfortunately, no, there's no automatic fill as the day. Okay, what's the best way to process a dual transaction buyer and seller agents within the same brokerage or team? 2 separate buyer and seller side, or dual setup? Yeah. So if this is just my personal opinion, so there's a million ways. This would be a great question to ask on the Facebook group, because you're going to get people that are going to give you a bunch of different ideas, and you may like one better than the one that I give you. But the way I like to do it is if it's one agent representing both sides, then it's in the same file. Okay, I contain everything in there. If it is 2 separate agents on the team, Bill and Sally both represent their own parts, but they're on the same team. I put those in two separate transactions because I want them to fill out their own intake forms. So basically it's based on the number of agents because each agent will fill out their intake form. If there's one agent, you can create a dual transaction. Now in that case, you may want to create some extra templates and things like that that go with your dual-sided transaction. Now you don't have to, you could just say, add this buyer template and add this seller template, add this buyer template, add this seller template in your triggers in your intake form. But some people like to combine those and make a dual-sided template as well. So that's my take on it. I also am not opposed to creating two separate transactions for even if it is the same agent, just because you get that separation of data. You don't accidentally send something that you shouldn't to the wrong person. Also for reporting, sometimes it's a little bit easier to have that in your reporting, but totally personal preference. So yeah, sorry I couldn't be of more help, but I would say that that's the way I do it, and definitely post that on the Facebook group so you get about 10 to 20 more opinions on that. Okay, can you go over strategies, different use cases on when to use trigger templates for task and intake forms versus building them directly into the task template or intake forms? Let me read that again. Can you go over strategies, different use cases for when to use the trigger templates for task and intake forms versus building? Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying. So what they're saying is, for anyone new, because this is a little confusing. So when you come to templates, you have the ability to do these trigger templates. And in the trigger templates, you can add a new one and just name it whatever. And then in here, you have the ability to say, I want this to be a property trigger, which are the more automated ones that I told you about on the scale plan that are actually in the transaction for after the transaction is created. The task triggers. So let's just say you're going to create a task and it's going to have like 5 triggers in it. So when I check off this task, I want these 5 things to happen. And let's say you're going to use those set of triggers again on another task. There's another task that has very similar or the same triggers. What you can do is create a task trigger list here. So let's say those 5, you would say task triggers, you would create this, and then in there you would create your 5 triggers in a template. So you would say, here's your 5 triggers. And now I can apply these 5 triggers to any other task. So if I'm going to be using these 5 triggers again and again and again, and I don't want to have to go through each task to individually type them every single time, then I can just use this template, and then I can just insert all of these, with all of their conditions if you're on the scale plan and things like that. So all of the data in here would just come into that task. So use case, I would say, there's very little use case, honestly. It's probably about 2% of the time that you're doing this. I would say I use them more for not the tasks, but the intake. So like if I'm going to create an intake form the first time, so you can do this 2 different ways. So if I'm going to create a intake form, and I'm going to have one that's very similar to it. So maybe I have a buyer one, but then I have a buyer short sale one, or I have a buyer probate one, or a buyer this, and a lot of them are going to be the same. You don't have to recreate those all through your your intake form again. Just create all your triggers in here and then just apply that template to the intake form. And now when you create a new one, you can just reapply those and then make any changes you want. It's going to save you a ton of time. The other way to do it is to come into your intake forms after you've created one and go under options and clone this, and it's going to clone it exactly the same. And that's going to bring over all your fields. That's going to bring over all your form conditions, all your triggers, everything. So depending on the situation, a trigger template may work better than cloning the whole intake form again. And then the last one, sorry, let me get out of there. So go back to trigger templates and hit add new. This is the one where you really use them quite a bit, is those automated triggers for the property. Now I'm going to create them just like I create my task templates. So just like my task templates are going to be HOA tasks, septic tasks, well tasks, solar tasks, all these different little task templates, I'm going to create the same thing for property triggers. Now you can be a little bit bigger with the property triggers if you want, or you can keep them the same so that everyone understands when you're transitioning from tasks to triggers that it's kind of the same flow. But you may be adding, 8 templates at one time at the beginning of the transaction. It could say like my buyer triggers that come in on every single transaction. And then if there's an HOA, I want my HOA triggers. And then if there's septic, I want my septic triggers. And if there's whatever, a lender on the file, then I want my loan triggers. So to answer your question, I guess kind of to summarize all of this, intake forms, it really depends on the situation, whether you want to clone your intake form or whether you want to create an intake form triggers, but it is very time consuming. So just remember, when you're in the intake form and you go to create a new one and you come over here to triggers, and let's say you have like 20 triggers in here. You don't want to create another intake form that's very similar to this and have to go through all that work of adding the trigger, putting the condition in, doing all this stuff for 20 or 30 of these. Just create it one time and make a template out of it. And then you can just apply that same template to multiple. Even if they're different, you can apply it and then just go through and make your little changes, like a condition. I'll delete this condition out. If all of this is going to be the same, then I just delete the condition out and add a new condition. So it's going to save you so much time in the future. And let me just show you in a transaction real quick on the tasks, just so you guys are familiar with where these are. This is adding a task trigger. So I'm adding a template. This is a list of tasks that are coming in contained in this template. But if I go into the actual, and you'd probably be doing this over in the templates, but I'm just going to show you in here. If you come into this task and you, oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. I apologize. Let me open this up. Okay, so you're in here. Now I can apply a template that is my trigger template. So if I select this one, I don't even know what's in here, but apply this. And now it's going to install. They've installed them. And now I come down here and these two came in. All right, cool. How do docs auto download or sync to Google Drive? When is this set up in the process? Yeah, so typically what you're going to want to do is after the transaction is created, so after the agent submits the intake form or the TC, however you guys are doing it, then there's an approval process for the TC, a final approval process. Then it becomes a transaction. Once it's a transaction, you're going to want to click on Google Drive. And then you're going to want to add a folder or select a folder. Once you have that folder selected, now you're going to be able to turn on auto uploading. Okay, once this is on, if I come over here, this thing's going to be bouncing at you here. And now anytime I download a document in here, it's going to download to Google Drive. Now, what it won't do is delete out of Google Drive. We don't want anything to be destructive in Google Drive. So if you delete it out of here, we're not going to delete it. It's a full backup of everything that you've downloaded over there. So Matthew, anything else you can think of on that I'm missing?
I'm not going to lie. I had to look away for a second. Shane was talking to me about it. We're working on, so I kind of missed the question.
No worries. I said, so they were asking how to set up Google Drive. I clicked on it. I showed them if they select a folder that they're going to be able to turn on the auto uploading here. And that thing is going to be bouncing at them. Obviously that, any document that comes in. Now I told them, if you download here, it's not going to delete out of Google Drive. Is there anything else I'm missing that I'm not thinking of right now that we need to?
Nope, I think that's 100%. The only weird caveat I've seen is just some naming conventions. If you try to use symbols in like the Google Drive folders or even in the file names, it can get a little weird. Just it doesn't convert right apparently in Google, but it shouldn't be too big a deal.
Okay. The other thing I'll mention is if you select these, you have some options. So you can do, if you have the DocuSign integration, that's here. If I want to send these over to Google Drive, I can do that here manually too. So if I don't want to do it automated, if you come in here and you select all and then hit this and hit Google Drive, you can send those over in one bulk file as well.
One thing I have seen come up, just one last thing with the folders in Drive. You can select the folder that you're designating them to, which means you could technically have like a subfolder for organization. Just keep in mind your auto sync is going to sync to one folder. I'd keep that as your big bucket, and then your manual syncs can be to specific folders. So
perfect.
I want to throw that out there.
Perfect. All right, we are out of questions. What time is it? It is 12:44. So Mountain Time. So we got 15 more minutes. If anyone wants to shoot some more questions in there, I'll stick around for a little bit until we see that there's no more questions coming in. So far, great questions today. Really good questions, but Anything you're stuck on, like what's the hardest part of the program for you? What's the hardest comprehension part? We could talk about strategy. You know, a couple of those questions were, you know, how do you think I should set this up? Those are huge, because not that it's not recoverable, but you don't want to go down the wrong route too far, because then you're going to have to shift gears. Like I was talking about earlier with the task templates. When you're creating task templates, you don't want to create, like I see a lot of people coming from other programs and they have this one giant task template with 200 and some tasks in it. And then you put it into your transaction, and then you're like deleting some don't apply, some only apply sometimes. You know, it's not what we're going for in open to close. This is a totally custom program where you can create custom fields. You can have exactly the number of tasks you need for that transaction. How you're going to do that is have these are all the tasks that I have for a buyer that come in every single time. So if it's not 100% of the time, it's not going to be in my template here. And then I will break it up into things, caveats that happen. Is it a cash deal with no appraisal contingency? Is it a finance deal with no appraisal contingency? Is it a septic well, solar, FERPTA? All those things that derail the typical process in a transaction. Is it financing? What kind of financing? Is it conventional? Is it VA? Is it USDA? You may have different tasks for that stuff. I don't want to put like a financing template in here that just covers all of them. As you get more sophisticated with the system, now you may want to do that at the beginning, but as you get more sophisticated with the system, you may break these down even more so that you have a general financing, but then you also have, hey, if it's a VA financing and they filled that out during the intake form, go ahead and pop in these 2 extra tasks that I have to do for VA financing. For sellers, is it, you know, acreage? Is it land? Is it a probate? Is it a short sale? Is it, you know, all these things? There's so many things that could come up on a transaction that differ. Is it seller financing? You know, that definitely throws a wrench in the plans. Is it a sub 2 deal? Is it a wholesale deal? Is it the list goes on. You guys are more familiar than I am probably at this point, but yeah, so that's how you're going to want to approach this, is a very custom, start with general and then start parsing down to make it more custom. And you see exactly what you need to see at the right time. So right message to the right person at the right time. That's what we're going for, whether that's to the client or whether that's to your team. Okay. Erica said last question. Huh? Yeah, no, great. Keep them coming, honestly. Google Calendar changes do not revert back to open to close details. Is there a best practice to sync open to close details or open to close calendar to Google Calendar with the title of the calendar or details that talk to each other? Let me think about this for a second. You could probably, I don't know, Jana, do you know of any, like a zap that you could do from if Google Calendar updates to throw that date back into the fields in open to close?
Potentially. We don't necessarily have any Zapier type connection with webhooks for data coming back into open to close. So at that point, we would want to be working with the API. So I would say let's kind of dig in a little bit further. I would want to maybe take a deeper look, and Matthew, we may be able to speak to some of this too with the calendar and potentially just making those updates to your calendar events directly in open to close and then have those push over to your calendar.
Yeah.
Just to see if that reverse order will still alleviate you having to update in both places.
Yeah, if you want to reach out to support, they'll probably send it to Jan, honestly, and she'll take a look at it with you and we can try to figure that out. But, and you may want to talk to like a Justin Benson or someone over at the bar group about that, because I know they deal with a lot of those little things, or Jeff Moore over at Osiris or some of those guys, because they may have some solutions. They're working with Zapier every single day. I have a huge seller and buyer tasks only. I want to break them down, but I have an order they go in. So I would have to add a date to each template to follow my order. It doesn't so send in a follow-up on this, Jessica. Doesn't the date dictate where you would want to do them? So like if it's one day after, you know, let's say it's one day after contract acceptance, and then the other one's 2 days after, and the next one's 3 days after, wouldn't you want them in date order, not a predetermined order? And maybe you're just anticipating the transaction and they are by date. But let me know, because there's 2 different ways you can do it. So you can do, let's see here. So if I go to tasks, you have the ability to sort tasks by date, right? Or you have the ability to sort tasks by user sorted. And so let me think oh, here it is. Yeah. So by scheduled and unscheduled. So scheduled goes first by date, and then the unscheduled ones are down here at the bottom. Or you can do it by user sorted. User sorted would be the way that you have them in your template. And that's fine. You can do it either way. I just find that most people do it by scheduled, and then they, in their templates, so over in the task templates, let's see here. Over in the task, oh, that's not task templates. There we go. So in the task templates, you're setting dates on these. So let me go to a date. And then typically you're saying, 2 calendar days after this other date, roll it to Monday if it lands on a Saturday, Sunday, roll it to Friday if it lands on a Saturday, Sunday. And then all those are just kind of parsed in. That's why it works so well with like HOA tasks and septic tasks. It doesn't really matter what template they're in. Once they come in, they're all together and you're doing them by date. And then you have other ways to sort them. Let me go back over there. I should have 2 screens open here, but so let's see here, go back to tasks. So now you can sort them in other ways. You could say, hey, if someone's just working on this section of the transaction, they could look at just what came in this template. Or you could sort them by just the things that are assigned to Adam. Or you could assign it to anything that's tagged closing, anything that's a certain color. And, all these different filters right now will be able to assist you in parsing those down and seeing things in the way that you want to see them. But if your way is definitely user sorted, then just go user sorted here. Okay, if you're coming from,
Oh, sorry, real quick there, Andrew. There's a couple of options that might be helpful too if you're not really relying on, say, the date. Might be pinning or making a task critical. Those can be helpful. Critical you can use as a filter if you're, say, working on the task pipeline. I just need to see my critical tasks. So you don't necessarily, you're not looking for a tag, you're not looking for color, same idea. But yeah, you can do it by the critical ones, or pin, it just puts it right at the top. You can pin that to the top. So it won't necessarily rely as much on the date. One of the cool things with the dates, though, is you're using a document or a date template rather. It's going to go through try and help calculate a bunch of dates for you. If you have these tasks that are based on these fields, it just goes in tandem. It works really well together. I automatically have the system calculate all these dates for me, and because of those dates, it's going to automatically calculate a bunch of the actual task due dates as well. So.
Sorry, I was just reading another question here. So she said they do, but some of them don't. For example, the home warranty ordered for some agents at the beginning, and some don't want me to order it until contingencies are removed. So it makes it hard to add the date if there's various tasks that I need to do for that. Sure. So how you want to handle that is you would base it off of, you may have to create an extra field. I'm not sure, you may not, but an extra field sometimes is helpful to say, like, this is the agent suggested date. And maybe it's one day after. So like if this agent always says, I want it to be one day after the inspection is agreed upon, like all the repairs are agreed upon, then you can have a field for agent name. You can say, if it's Bob, then this is the template I want to come in. If it's Jason, this is the template. If it's Susan, this is the template. And so you could divide those up. You could also have smart blocks that come into your emails based on which agent it is and how they want to word that stuff. Yeah, critical and tags and colors, those are great. The other thing I'll mention is milestones. So like, instead of having milestones up here like TC Workflow used to have, if you're a TC Workflow user, what you can do is you could have one that says they want the home warranty. There's no home warranty. They want the home warranty ordered immediately. They want the home warranty ordered after the inspection. Each of those 3, so it's a little cumbersome because you got 3, right? But it's a milestone point. You're looking at all 3 of these together and you're saying, which one do I want to check off? They want to order it at the beginning. Boom. Well, what that's going to do is you can have a template in your triggers here, and now it's going to apply the right template for those other things to come in. Now, if they want you to wait until after the inspection, you would have another trigger, and those would be based off that inspection date or the repair date or whatever. If there's no warranty, then you can check that one off and nothing happens, and you can delete out the other 2. So you would check off one, delete the other 2, or most cases it's a milestone. There's only 2 options. So you complete one, you delete one. And so that's how, and sometimes I'll even put milestone in here so that I know, like, milestone, and then you may even want to like this is milestone number 5. And the 5 is, what's the word I'm looking for? Is it doesn't really matter. It's just so if you have a list and somehow these get split up by 1 or 2, that now you can match them. Let's just say that this one got changed. Here, let me change this date to 23. And see how these got separated accidentally. They should be the same date. You should have these calculating off the same date, like one day after. But if you have like 4 things, you may get them separated a little bit. You can always move these if you wanted to. But this kind of keeps them in order. So you can keep track of milestone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to a million if you wanted to. But that's the way I like to handle these decision points that you're not quite sure yet. Then in here in the triggers, now you can say, when I check this task off, I want this email to go out to title saying, hey, there's no home warranty. Don't worry about it on this transaction. But if I check off the other one that says there is, maybe an email goes out to escrow, an email, a text goes out to your buyer agent, an email goes out to your buyer saying, hey, it's time to choose this. Here are your choices, blah, blah, blah. So there's a whole rabbit hole that we could go down this for, 20, 30 minutes and talk about this. So if you have additional questions, feel free to submit those and we can walk through those. All right. If you're coming from one of the other program that has a huge amount of templates that needs the merge field switched, do you have a good practice for that? Yeah. So I know where you're coming from, and those merge fields are a nightmare. So I'm not sure if Jana, can you speak to Joe's question coming from RV? If let me go in here, and is there an option for the way that they do them over there? I don't think there is. I think don't they use hashtags?
Yeah, with a lot of systems, there may be slight variances with the merge field format. I believe where you're coming from, Joe, it does not have those merge field options for a clean template tool at this time. So first thing I would always want to consider when I'm transitioning from one system to another, especially if I'm coming from a system that may not have custom fields, am I making changes to the fields in this new open to close account anyways? The chances are you will be, because you get that custom control. We want that to match your state, your contract, your language. So that's going to open up some options for you, which in turn is likely going to change the merge fields in general in your template. So in your case, I likely would task that out as a project where you use those categories to your advantage. If we have categorized those email templates, you can go category by category, and the system should flag you if there's any broken merge fields in that template. From there, you can go in, swap those out with your new merge fields. Otherwise, I would kind of lean on Hannah. If there's any additional options, I do believe you guys are working together there. So I would try it out, see if that email template is flagging those merge fields for you. If you have any questions from there, let us know for your next session as well.
Cool. Okay. Is there a way to have critical dates, EMD closing show in one spot without having them all in the same section, or using the priority buttons? No, not yet. So that's one thing I would like to do in the future is what she's talking about, guys, is having almost like a view, having almost like a filter where you could say, just show me all my dates, anything with a date, let's pop it up into this view. There's no current way to do that. You could have all your dates like you had mentioned in one section. I don't like that personally. I know a lot of people used it that way. I just didn't do it that way because I didn't want to constantly have to remember if I added a date to that section or deleted one, that I needed to go and update all my intake forms, because I had an excessive amount of intake forms. If you have like 1 or 2, no big deal, but you just have to remember that. If you have a list of dates here and you go add one, well, now you're not adding a field section anymore. You're adding individual fields. So you'd have to go and individually edit that in your intake forms. But a lot of people like to see all the dates in one spot. And so it's a viable option if you like that. But yeah, Kaylee's question is, can we filter these down and just have like a view? And I would love to have that in the future. We just don't have it yet. We just don't have a way to do that currently. So yeah, great suggestion though. Go ahead and put that in the Idea Lab if it's not there already, or at least vote it up. If you come over here to the Idea Lab, see if there's like a filter view on fields in here, and definitely vote for that. Oh, let's see, 12:59. All right, that was perfect. I'll stick around for a couple more minutes, see if there's any more questions, but this was a great day. You guys were all great. Lots of good questions. This is what makes these valuable, is when you guys participate. And so I really appreciate you not only being here, but asking a ton of questions, because if you're having this problem, there's 15 other people having these same problems. And a lot of this stuff you just wouldn't naturally know. So coming here and, asking about integrations and APIs and ways to do tasks and things like that, it's only going to enhance your efficiency. And we want to get you guys down to, a couple hours of transaction. We got some really cool automations that we're working on in the background for the future. So sky's the limit here. You guys get a good foundation in and work, on that foundation and start adding these smart blocks and start adding some of these extra features. By the time we're ready to push out some of this new automation, you guys will be ready for it. So, all right, well, everyone have a good day. Same time, same place next week. Let me see. Next week, I will not be here, but someone will take over for me. I'll be in Hawaii. Don't be jealous. But yeah, so probably Jan and Matthew will take over for me, and I'm sure they'll do a great job. So same time, same place next week. Thanks for being here. Talk to you soon. Bye.